In Mass Effect Andromeda's multiplayer, you are part of an Apex team, the best of the best the Nexus has to offer. While not a regular group of soldiers, they are nonetheless talented individuals that take on the most dangerous and important missions in this new galaxy. In this series, we are going to take a look at the various class builds for the various characters in the game's multiplayer. So with that in mind, I'm Darcblade, and let's take a look at our next Mass Effect Andromeda multiplayer character, the Asari Adept. As always, remember these builds are aimed at the higher difficulties in the game and will be mostly focusing on rank 10, level 20 characters. However, there will be suggestions for lower ranked characters as long as they're level 20 later on in the video. The Asari Adept may be the most powerful biotic user in the game. Through a combination of her abilities and passives, she's able to perform a number of roles: crowd control, support, or DPS. She is able to do all, and thus, as a result, there are multiple builds available for this character. I personally like to go with a high risk, high reward build that focuses on damage and biotic combos. So with that in mind, I start by going up to rank 1 in Throw. I only go up to rank 1 in Throw in favour of the other abilities and passives. However, for those of you who like to play it safe and don't like what I've done with Lance, maxing out Throw would probably be the better option. If I were to do so, I'd put points firstly at rank 6, putting points into Swift Detonation over Double Throw. Swift Detonation will allow your combos to deal more damage, and you'll be able to use Throw more often. Next, I'll put points into Recharge Speed over Duration. Whilst Duration will make Throw a priming ability, Recharge Speed is better for the Asari Adept, as you'll be using Throw as a detonator. And finally, with rank 4, I put points into Damage and Force over Radius. Next, with Annihilation, this is where things become interesting. I maxed this out going up to rank 6, putting points into Draining Field over Vortex. Whilst Vortex is alright and gives you crowd control when it comes to unprotected targets, the fact that it won't affect shielded or armoured targets made me favour Draining Field. On top of that, Draining Field also provides a small healing mechanic, as it will restore yours and your allies' shields, as long as they're close to you, whenever an enemy dies whilst affected by the Annihilation Field. This is one of the aims when playing as this character. You want enemies to die within the field as often as possible, thus providing a service to you and your teammates. Next, with rank 5, I put points into Damage Attractor over Biotic Wind. Biotic Wind isn't really needed, although it's useful for a roaming team that likes to wander. Damage Attractor is far more useful, not only to yourself, but for your team, as it turns Annihilation Field into a debuffing tool. So any enemy within your field, armoured, shielded, or unprotected, they will take 20% more damage from all sources. This includes you and your teammates. Finally, with rank 4, I put points into Radius over Recharge Penalty. Because Annihilation Field is active pretty much 100% of the time, your other powers will be affected by the recharge penalty. However, the way I've spec'd it, it means it won't be an issue thanks to an evolution in the Lance tree. Thus, Radius becomes the better option, as it allows you to affect more opponents, and it means that you don't have to get as close to your opponents to even affect them with the Annihilation Field, coming in far more useful. Next, with Lance, I maxed this out going up to rank 6, putting points into Shield Powered over Knockdown. This is where a lot of people debate to which is the better option when it comes to Lance or Throw. Shield Powered means that you'll use a portion of your shields to fuel the Lance. This completely removes any recharge time on the Lance ability. So as long as you have shields, it means that you can use it. This also means that you can potentially spam the ability over and over again. Say there are multiple foes within your Annihilation Field, then you can potentially use Lance over and over again to activate multiple combos. However, this is where the high risk, high reward aspect of this build comes into play. Knockdown is okay and is probably the safer option, but as I said, Shield Powered is one of the key abilities in this specific build for the Asari Adept. Next, with rank 5, I put points into Focus Blast over Anti-Shield. Whilst Anti-Shield is fine, because Lance can get critical hits, Focus Blast comes in more efficient at dealing damage. And finally, with rank 4, I put points into Damage and Force over Radius. Both are actually alright, and Radius may activate multiple combos with one Lance, but Damage and Force gives Lance that extra bite needed to potentially take out foes, killing them within your Annihilation Field. With the passive with Offensive Biotics, I maxed this out going up to rank 6, putting points into Biotic Warrior over Biotic Expert. Again, I feel these are really down to personal preference. Biotic Expert is completely viable on this build, but Biotic Warrior allows me to deal more damage with my weaponry. As Lance uses up my shield now instead of a recharge time, it means I can take heavier weaponry into the game, more powerful weapons to deal damage for when it's too risky to use Lance. Next, with rank 5, I put points into Exposure over Combo Detonation. This, again, is a point of debate. I personally went for Exposure to provide another 20% debuff to targets affected by the Annihilation field. Combo Detonation is nice, as you'll be doing a lot of biotic combos with this character, but Exposure combined with the Annihilation's field Damage Attractor gives you a grand total of a 40% damage debuff to enemies, which kind of trumps the 30% damage combo. Combo Detonation works really well when combined with Thro's rank 6 evolution, Swift Detonation. However, Exposure and Damage Attractor in the Annihilation field means that not only the damage is increased from you, but your entire team. And then finally with rank 4 I put points into Power Enhancement over Power Efficiency. This is because with this build, recharge speed really isn't an issue. And finally with Barrier, I maxed this out going up to rank 6, putting points into Save and Barrier over Active Barrier. This is simply because Save and Barrier will provide me a get out of jail free card, as it will restore my shields if I'm in danger. And the chances of that are very high considering the way I'm using Lance. Next with rank 5 I put points into Barrier Drain over Biotic Link. Now both of these are actually quite viable. Biotic Link considering that most enemies will be affected by your Annihilation field, but Barrier Drain allows you a quick way to quickly get some shields back and then potentially use Lance again. And finally with rank 4 I put points into Unyielding Barrier over Recuperative Barrier to give myself more shields. As for weaponry, now because this build is not reliant on weight at all, it means you can take in the heaviest weapons you can possibly want to a match. As for your gear, you want to take something to either increase your biotic damage, weaponry, or survivability. Now moving on to the heart of the episode to talk about the moves and abilities the Asari Adept has in their arsenal. First is Throw. Once used, the Asari Adept will hurl a gravity-filled projectile that homes in on opponents. This will knock unshielded and unarmored opponents off their feet, sending them flying. It will also deal damage to them on the initial hit, but also more damage for when they fly into an object in the world like a wall. Throw is also a detonator, so it can be used to activate combos, both biotic and tech. With the Asari Adept though, Throw comes in useful for when you cannot use Lance, because it's a safe ability and it won't require you to spend any of your barrier shields. Throw can be turned into a biotic primer as well if you put points into duration in the rank 5 evolution. Also with Throw, the priming effect will only occur if the target is unprotected, so they don't have shields or armor. Because Throw is a homing projectile, you don't actually have to be that accurate with the ability. It can also be used to hurl around cover at enemies who are hiding. The next ability is Annihilation. This unique ability, when activated, will stay active until manually turned off, or you go down. With this, the Asari Adept will weave a shifting mass effect field around her body that slowly damages enemies within it, as well as priming any target for a biotic combo. This means that it can also prime protected targets, which usually biotic abilities cannot. The biggest downside of Annihilation Field is that while it's active, all your other cooldowns will suffer a reduced recharge speed penalty. This can be alleviated slightly within the tree, however with the Asari Adept build the way I've got it, it doesn't really matter too much. Annihilation Field is probably the key ability that makes the Asari Adept so powerful. With the way it's spec'd, it can help restore yours and your allies' shields. Also, the way I'm using it, it means it provides a damage debuff to opponents that are close to me. This is made even greater thanks to the passive Exposure talent. However, because Annihilation Field is focused around the Asari Adept, it means that she has to put herself at risk in order to get the best results, again adding to that risk-reward gameplay style. Annihilation Field also comes in handy because it will affect anyone underneath you. Say for example, if you're on the roof and there are enemies in the room underneath you, then they will be affected by the Annihilation Field. One tip for Annihilation Field is to remember that when you do go down, to reactivate the ability again. The third and final ability is Lance. This devastates a small area with a swift throw of biotic energy that inflicts bonus damage against weak points such as headshots. This is a very fast ability and benefits from a good aim. Lance also works as a detonator, and with the Asari Adept case, it's going to be your main source of combo detonations. With points in the shield powered evolution, it means that Lance, when thrown, will consume a portion of your shields. You can potentially throw 3 lances before all your shields are depleted. However, with points the way they've spent in Annihilation Field and your passives, you can potentially throw more than 3 lances so long as enemies die within your Annihilation Field. As I've already mentioned, this is where the high risk, high reward gameplay style comes into play. And if you are really not comfortable with using Lance like this, then it's probably better to go with the throw ability. But if you are going with the throw ability, remember to use a lighter weapon loadout. As for the passives, with offensive biotics, The first point, Biotic Expert and Biotic Warrior, are down to personal preference, but exposure is where things become very interesting. And when it comes to your barrier, try to increase it for max survivability. With weaponry, now I've already talked about this. Personally, I like to take the N7 Hurricane or N7 Piranha for the best results. As for the Asari Adept, she comes with fairly low health and shields in all honesty, but thanks to her abilities and passives, means that she's able to restore her shields at a quick rate when compared to some of the other classes. For her dodge mechanics, she has a dodge fueled by biotic power, which can cover quite a bit of distance, getting her out of trouble when needed. As for her melee attack is a biotic punch, similar to the human Adept and human Vanguard. Now, if you don't have a rank 10 level 20 Asari Adept, then I would advise focusing firstly on Annihilation Field and then offensive biotics, going up to at least exposure or combo detonator. After which, it's a choice between whether you want throw or lance, and then finally, any points you have left, put them into barrier. Overall, the Asari Adept is one of the most powerful characters in the game as it stands at the moment. You just have to remember that the Asari Adept is best when it comes to close range encounters thanks to her Annihilation Field and other abilities. This can put her at risk, especially on the harder difficulties in the game. They can also be used in both hunkered down or roaming team compositions. If, however, you are using them in a hunkered down position, maybe consider putting them at the entrance of a choke point, just behind cover, but just enough so their Annihilation Field will affect targets coming into that choke point, thus giving you and your team that increase of damage thanks to the defense debuff. When it comes to Lance, this is where it comes into personal preference. If you do like the risk-reward gameplay style and the potential to deal a ton of damage, but at the same time put yourself at great risk, then shield-powered Lance is the build to go with. If you don't like this though, then the more consistent throw ability, putting points into that, will be maybe the better option. Also, if you can't aim with Lance, throw again is a better option here. The biggest thing about the Asari Adept is do not get too carried away. It may be wonderful running around a map, activating combos left, right and centre, but remember that sometimes your combos don't actually kill the targets, unless you may not receive any of the benefits from Annihilation Field, like Draining Field, thus restoring your barriers. This is where your weaponry can come in useful for when your powers are on cooldown, or, for in this case, if you don't have any shields left to use Lance. As I said, I feel exposure in the offensive biotic tree and damage attractor in the Annihilation Field tree benefit not only you, but your entire team, thus allowing you to easily take on the higher difficulties in the game. But anyway, I hope this guide helps, and until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing you another Mass Effect Andromeda Multiplayer class guide to the Asari Adept. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.